I never believed in ghosts or spirits, and I certainly didn't think I would ever have a story like this to share. But what happened to me in that old house changed everything. A few years back, I was looking for a place to rent on a tight budget. I found a surprisingly cheap old house in a small town. It was the kind of place that had a faded charm, like it'd been left behind in time. I figured, why not? It was quiet, isolated, and affordable. The landlord seemed eager to get rid of it, which should have been my first red flag. From the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you're convinced someone's watching you? Yeah, that was the whole house. But I brushed it off, telling myself it was just nerves about moving somewhere new. After all, it was an old house, probably had creaky floors and weird drafts, nothing supernatural. My first night there was uneventful. No spooky noises or shadows lurking in corners. I actually started thinking maybe I'd gotten a sweet deal. But then, on the second night, things started happening. I was lying in bed, trying to get some sleep, when I heard faint whispers. It sounded like two people having a hushed conversation right outside my bedroom door. I sat up, heart racing, straining to hear what they were saying, but it was just gibberish, like a static-filled radio station. I forced myself to think it was just the wind whistling through the old windows. I tried to laugh it off, but that night, I didn't sleep much. The next day, I convinced myself it was nothing. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder. I would hear them during the day too, always faint, like they were just out of reach. It got to a point where I could almost make out words, but they slipped away before I could fully grasp them. One evening, I decided to investigate. I walked through every room, trying to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. As I stood in the hallway, I heard it again. Clearer this time. Come back. I froze, feeling my skin prickle with fear. Every hair on my body stood on end. It was coming from behind me, but when I turned around, there was no one there. Get a grip, I told myself, though my voice shook. But as I turned to head back to my room, I heard it again, almost like a taunt. Come back. This time, it was right in my ear. I spun around so fast I nearly tripped over myself, and for a split second, I saw something. A shadow, darker than the darkness around it, just slipping around the corner. I ran after it, flicking on lights as I went, but there was nothing. I was alone. The next morning, I called the landlord. I didn't want to seem crazy, but I needed to know if there was some history to the place. He hesitated before saying, "I'm surprised you stayed this long." He went on to explain that a couple had lived there before me. They'd been strange, he said, obsessed with contacting the dead. Apparently, they believed the house was some kind of portal to the other side. They held seances and rituals, convinced they could communicate with spirits trapped between worlds. Eventually, they disappeared. Just vanished one night, leaving all their belongings behind. The landlord found the house empty and locked from the inside. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, but he just mumbled something about not wanting to scare off potential tenants. I hung up, furious, but now knowing I wasn't imagining things. That night, I stayed up, armed with a flashlight and a bat, determined to face whatever was whispering to me. It started again, right on cue. But this time the words were clearer. Come back to us. It was like dozens of voices blending together, getting louder and louder until I thought my head would explode. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice breaking. "What do you want?" Silence. The house seemed to hold its breath. And then, a reply, so clear it felt like someone was standing right in front of me. "Stay, forever." I backed up, heart hammering, and stumbled into my bedroom. The whispers followed me, surrounding me, almost pleading. And then I saw it, scratched into the wall above my bed, deep enough that flakes of paint fell to the floor. Stay. I ran out of that house that night, didn't even grab my stuff. I slept in my car and called the landlord the next day, telling him I was done. He didn't argue. I'm guessing he'd heard it all before. I moved out and never looked back. But sometimes, I still hear those whispers, faint, almost like a memory. I keep telling myself it's just my imagination. But deep down, I know they're waiting, hoping I'll come back, just like they asked. So yeah, I don't believe in ghosts or spirits. But I do believe in that house. And if you ever find a rental that seems too good to be true, maybe think twice before moving in. Because some places, they want more than just a tenant.